Hi, and so in this video we are now going to take our sort of models and start to um, learn the basics of rigging, ready for next week where you are going to start to complete your character and ready to start animating. Okay, so from this base scene I've uploaded to the Moodle page. You will see an arm that I've created for my sort of supervillain. Okay, and for this, what we are going to do is add in some joints, add some controls to those joints, and then add our geometry to that. Okay, so before we get started, the one thing we're going to do is just smooth out this mesh. So I'm going to go to Mesh. Okay, go to Modeling, Menu Set, Mesh, go down to Smooth, select the settings box. I'll click the settings box. Make sure our division levels are on 1. Click Apply. Close. So I'm happy with that. What I'd like you to then do is just go to modify, edit, delete by type, and go to history. Then go to modify for each transformations, just double check the arms okay. And from this point we are pretty much ready to start adding the joints in. So I'm going to go to panels, and I'm going to go to top view. Now just in case you haven't got the outliner open and you can only see this window, not what I just had up, you can select this window here that will bring up the outliner and perspective view. I'm going to go to panels, orthographic and top, and I'm going to change this now to wireframe mode so I can actually see what's going through my arm. Okay, and I'm just going to push F to frame the piece, and I'm going to go down to this drop down menu and I'm going to select rigging. Now what I want to do is actually make this so I can see the geometry of the arm but not actually select it. Okay, so on your menu, if you can see these blue bars here, that's good, that's what you want. If not, you need to select one of the little bars around here to reveal it. And if you select this piece in the middle here, which is like 4 little squares, it will prevent you from being able to select that geometry, okay, which is what we want. So from our rigging menu, we're going to go down to skeleton, joints, create joints, and we're going to actually create the upper arm, the lower arm, and the wrist. So I'm going to start in the center of the upper arm. I'm going to move out slightly towards the back of the elbow, okay, and I'm then going to move towards the center of the wrist, okay, and I'm going to go right click at the end of the wrist, okay, which will seal that cap. Now in the outliner, if we go down, we can see all the joints and we can see the dummy objects as joint 4. So if we click them one by one, you can see them light up differently, okay, as we go through. So well, first thing is first, we're going to rename these joints. Okay, so this is going to be our right upper arm. Okay, we then have our right lower arm. You may even want to do this the other way around, so it actually says arm lower and arm upper. Okay, so in fact, yeah, let's reposition those. So we're going to go right arm lower and right arm upper, okay, and then we're going to have right arm wrist and right arm dummy. Obviously when we have fingers or create fingers, those fingers are also going to be attached off, so you're going to have many little bits of the fingers coming down as well. Okay, so with this in mind, what's going to happen is we are going to add in some controls. Okay, so we've got our joints there. We just actually need something to attach them to. So if I was to select this one and move it, you can see it rotating. But we don't want that. We don't want it to move. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to our curves and surfaces, so polygon menu set, curves and surfaces, and we're going to select this circular object here, and you'll see it's created this. Right, there we are. And I'm just going to move this. So I've got a snap on there. If I just turn it off, I'm going to move this roughly around where our joint is, and I'm then going to rotate that 90 degrees. So there's minus. I'm going to type 90, and then I'm going to go to Modify, Freeze Transformations. Okay. I'm going to rename this as right arm upper, but this time I'm going to add a capital C T R L, which is control, but abbreviated. Okay, so we know it's a control, and you can see in my outliner we have our joints and then we have our control. And I'm going to duplicate this, and I'm going to move it down to roughly where our joint is, but we can't see this too well, so I'm going to go to show, and I'm going to go down to polygons and just hide that, and I'm going to move this into the center here. Okay, and I'm going to go to Modify, Freeze Transformations. I'm then going to duplicate it again and take this down to the window there. Okay, and what I'm going to do is go to Modify, Freeze Transformations. Okay, so I'm going to rename these. So we need to rename this one as lower, so we can do it over here. So we can just change that to lower control, and we're just going to change this one to wrist. Okay, control. So with that there, what we actually need to do is parent these together. So I'm going to select our wrist and select our elbow, and I'm going to push P. Okay, what you'll see in the outliner now is we have this drop down box. Our wrist is a child, our lower arm is the parent of the wrist, our wrist is the child of the parent. Okay, so if I now move this, we can see that that control follows that object. Now another way of doing this is to use the outliner, where we can push the middle mouse button in and drag it into which you'd like it to be a child of. So I want the lower arm to be a child of the upper arm. So I'm going to drag and drop that in, which now we can see a nice chain of parented controls. So if I move this now, they should follow, and they do, which is excellent. That is exactly what we want. So the next stage now is to actually attach our joints to our controls, but we don't want to parent them. Okay, because that's going to end up meaning that if we move this, it's going to tell this to move, but then it's also going to tell this to move twice, which means it's going to separate and go all kinds of crazy. So, and it will break their chain. So what we are going to do is use the constraint tool, which is from this drop down menu here, and we want our orientation to be constrained. Okay, so we want our orientation to be constrained, our rotation to be constrained. So I'm going to select our upper arm control, push control, and select the upper arm joint. Okay, so select for control, hold control on the keyboard, and select the upper arm joint. Go to constrain. Now this bit's really important. I want you to go to the settings of the orientation. Can you please make sure that you click maintain offset? If you don't, your joints will move. Did you see that? I'm going to undo. The joints move. Okay, so I'm just going to undo that. It's frozen. There we go. I want you to click maintain offset. This means the offset of this control is going to be maintained. That distance is going to maintain. It's not going to move. Click apply. So what should happen now is if I move this, they all move together. Excellent. But because we haven't constrained these controls, they're not influencing the joints. So I'm going to select the lower control and then select the lower arm joint, and I'm going to click apply again, and this time we should see that move, and we do. Brilliant. So finally I'm going to select the wrist control, push control on the keyboard and select the wrist joint, and I'm going to click apply again, and finally that should mean our last piece of the puzzle is in, and it is. Okay, so I'm going to close this orientation off. I'm going to bring back our polygon so we can see where it is. And now, as you can see, we have our mesh. We can't select that because we need to turn it back on up here. Have our mesh. We have our joints. Excellent. So the next stage is to actually attach our joints, skin our joints around the skin our flesh, sorry, our mesh around the joints. So we're going to select our mesh, select our joints, and we're going to go to skin, and we're going to go to bind skin. Okay, and what will happen now is you can see we've attached our skin. Okay, our skin is now attached to our bones. Okay, which is exactly what we wanted. So if we just turn back on this here, you will see that our joints are now attached to our skin. Okay, obviously if I turn this, you can see it's deforming a bit weirdly, and there is a very specific reason for that, and one which we're going to have to fix. But right now, as you can see, that's looking okay, except our mesh is nowhere near our joints because our joints have been made at 0. Okay, so don't worry, this is an easy fix. We can undo this and we can rebind it. So we're going to click Ctrl Z, which will undo, and we're just going to reposition. So I'm going to go to the front view. So front, push F to frame it, and I'm going to push W, and I'm just going to move the mesh. So sorry, I just want to go to wireframe mode. I just want to move the mesh to the center of the joint. So our center line, which is around here, should be center of that joint. Okay, and yeah, and we're just going to make sure our joint's there. Cool. So with our joints repositioned, we'll go back to perspective. And I just wonder, I may have put this joint a bit too far back. Which is why it's deforming so much when it moves forward. But this moment in time, we can fix that a little later on. If we push insert, we can move the joint over slightly. Okay, so let's just check that that still rotates okay. Yeah, we've still got our rotation. It's just our control is slightly off. Let's just check how this rotates from this point. Yeah, it just means the positioning of our control is just slightly off. But we maintain the offset. So right, so I'm going to go back and select the mesh, select the joints. Oh. So let's just select the joint system as well. So we select that right to upper arm. We don't select the ones further down because we want the whole chain. And we go to skin and we go to bind skin. So when we move this time, okay, so that's working. It would appear that by manipulating that, I've actually oh no, there we go. I was moving the joint, that was the problem. So again, if we turn our body back on, you can now see we have our mesh moving, and we're going to have to tidy this up. But for now, I think we're okay. I think we've actually, I want you to actually get to this point first. Okay, and obviously if we just turn on this, we can start to see the way that mesh moves. Okay, which is pretty cool. And I would like you to actually just play around, maybe set some keyframes, and play around with the overall deformation. Okay, and start to play around with your arm. Okay, So I'm going to turn that back. In the next session I will just briefly talk about painting weights, but for now what I want you to do is to complete the arm, and with the next session we're going to actually look at painting the weights and fixing those up. So I want you to create this, get it logged onto your blog and talk me through it.